Hi, friends. If you're the type of player who has a pretty decent grasp of the fingerboard as far as knowing scales in multiple positions and your seventh chords and some of their inversions, and that's all well and good, but when it comes time to put it all together in a tune that has a lot of key changes in it, it kind of has some gray areas that you need some help with, then this video may be useful for you. So let's get into it. This is about an idea that can apply to scales, to chords, to arpeggios, really to any of those, in that we're visualizing different areas of the fingerboard. And essentially the idea is looking at how we typically learn something beginning from the root note and then changing that up a bit to be able to think about similar ideas from other scale degrees. So let me dive into it a little bit. Let's take an example of, let's say, an A major scale. So hopefully you know about being able to play that scale in all over the fingerboard, but typically the way people learn is to find the root note, the A on the low string, and begin with different positions. So maybe it's the second position. In other words, we're starting on the A from our pinky, but we're playing up the scale this way. And then the next position might be to begin that same scale on the middle finger, but play everything in position, and then the index finger. And then we're out of positions for this low A, so then we find that same A on the fifth string and do the same thing. Begin with the pinky, begin with the middle finger, begin with the index finger. And now we've covered from the second fret all the way up to, the 14th fret. And that would begin again, right? So now we got the whole fingerboard covered. But what does this really mean? Well, I'm kind of assuming that you understood all of that, which hopefully you do. And if you don't, there's tons of stuff on YouTube to check out. But the point here being, most people learn and practice always from the root. And that can be a little bit limiting because you might know that scale really well in a certain position, and then as a tune is happening and a key change happens and you have to move to a new key, and now you take that same sort of position and move it to wherever that root note is. That's pretty limiting, right? Your ideas become fragmented because you're jumping around the fingerboard. So this idea is to ask yourself, what are the different functions of a particular idea, and move them through those key centers. So actually, let me back up one step. So what I'm getting to here is really to work out prior to playing, right? We're working through some fingerings and positions, and we're going to ultimately use it in a musical context. But right now it's the baby steps, so starting very slow. So let's take like an A major 7 arpeggio. If I play an A major 7 arpeggio starting in that position with the pinky, it would be something like this. Right? Simple A major arpeggio. But what I want to do now is say to myself, well, that's all well and good. So now I know my A major arpeggio starting in this position, starting from the pinky. But what if this were the third of the chord instead of the root? What would the root be? Well, the root would be F, right? So F would be our root. A is the third of F. So now if I play in the same position an F major arpeggio, now I'd get that. Now, what if the A, again, A is our pivot note, so we're always thinking about A. A is the root in an A major, A is the third in an F major. What if A was the fifth? What would the root be? And the answer to that is D. So play a D major arpeggio in this position, D major 7. And we get that. And then what if A were the seventh? What key would we be in? And we'd be in B flat. So if we play a B flat, here's the B flat, but we're thinking of this as our pivot note A, we get this. So the basic idea is just picking a pivot note, any note, but making that not just the root of the chord or the scale or the arpeggio that you're working on, but make it also the other chord degrees, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. So what if we moved it here and we played an A major 7 arpeggio starting on A? Well, what if we play, again, if this were the third, then F is the root, so we play an F major 7 arpeggio starting on A. We get that. Now, if A is the fifth, we have a D major 7, so if we play a D major 7 arpeggio, we get that starting on A. If we have A is the seventh, then the root is B flat, so a B flat major 7 arpeggio are those things. So again, the idea being pick a pivot note, make that not just the root, but also the third, the fifth, and the seventh of whatever you're working on. And that helps visualize these different combinations of fingerings throughout the fingerboard. So the same could be true for working on your inversions, right? Most people, like, say maybe there's an area that you're struggling with, like, let's say minor 7 flat 5 chords is not your strongest suit. So most people would say, oh, let's take A again, A minor 7 flat 5. I have this chord, right? This drop, I guess this would be a drop 2 and 4. And then learn its inversions, right? So you're going up to each inversion of the chord. And maybe you're familiar with this and say, okay, yeah, I know my inversions of a minor 7 flat 5 chord. That's cool. But if we apply this idea to make that pivot note, again, the A, the root, then what do we get when we try to play other seventh chords, minor 7 flat 5, seventh chords, using A as our pivot? So if A is the root, of course we have this, but if A was the minor third, then F sharp would be the root, and our voicing in that position would be this. If A were the flatted fifth, then it's an E flat minor 7 flat 5 chord. And if A were the seventh, then it's a B minor 7 flat 5 chord. So I have the same voicings that you play these, right? Your inversions, but you're keeping them in the same position, moving through this kind of thought game. A minor 7 flat 5, F sharp minor 7 flat 5 with the third on the bottom, E flat minor 7 flat 5 with the flat fifth on the bottom, B minor 7 flat 5 with the flat seventh on the bottom. And not that those are chord progressions you'd run into necessarily, but it's visualizing the fingerboard and using that pivot note to get your mind to think in terms of something new, right? Rather than always gravitating, finding the root and going from there all the time. Here we're finding the third or the flatted fifth in the case we just did, or the seventh, whatever it happens to be. And if you do that, the gaps, the perceived gaps start to go away, right? That maybe you feel good about playing a G scale starting here, but you don't feel so good about it starting here, or there's this gray area in between. Well, some of this approach can help sort of cover those gaps. So hope you can find that useful.